I couldn't believe it, but our pace picked up even more and the forest floor just looked like a big blur. But it wasn't fast enough because the lights from the ship were right on us and you could feel the heat and debris hitting us each time there was an explosion near us. Finally our luck run out and the beam of light hit the ground right beside us and we went tumbling through the air. The next thing I saw was the forest floor moving up towards me as I hit the ground with a thud. The next thing I know, I'm waking up in a room filled with bright lights and the sounds of a hospital machines beeping and humming. Looking around to see where I was, I noticed that there were a couple of people in the other two beds that were in the room I was in. The two other people must be in really bad shape because there are oxygen masks on both of them and all kinds of hoses stuck in their arms. I tried to roll over, but the pain was so unbearable, so I just turned my head to see if there was anything in the room that would let me know where I was or what I was doing here, but there was nothing on the walls like pictures or anything. There wasn't even a window to let in a single ray of sunshine. I took a closer look at all the machines that were next to my bed and the readings seemed pretty normal, although the writing that was on them wasn't like anything I had ever seen before. I started to try getting out of bed, but about then there were voices just outside the door that led to this room. I couldn't understand a word that was being said because it was a strange language, but I could tell that something was wrong by how the conversation became rushed and frantic. Thoughts came rushing through my head of how this was the end of my life as I had known it, and in any second a horrible alien would walk or crawl through that door and have me for lunch, or conduct some extremely painful experiment on my body like I've seen in the movies. The voices stopped and the doors started opening. I closed my eyes and prepared myself for the worst. I could hear the machines being moved around or changed on the patient next to me. That's when I felt my blanket being pulled up and tucked in around my shoulders. Next, a hand started brushing across my hair. I couldn't take it any more and opened my eyes to see what was touching me. I couldn't believe my eyes. In my wildest dreams, I wouldn't have imagined that a beautiful woman would be floating next to my bed instead of a vicious alien. She turned her head to the side and smiled as she took my hand and held it with both of hers. "Don't be afraid, young one," wasn't what I was expecting her to say, but it made me feel a whole lot better about this place. Naturally, I looked her over and could see that she wasn't floating, she was actually flying with a small set of wings that were attached in the middle of her back. I was still kind of leery of her, so I pulled my hand away and asked, "Where am I and what are you supposed to be?" "Well, little one, sometimes humans call my kind fairies, godmothers, but actually I'm a forest fairy, and as for where you are, I'll go get the big one to explain that to you." She turned and glided over to the door. As she waved her hand past it, it slowly opened enough that she could fly through. Then it closed as soon as her wings cleared the doorway. I got out of bed and tried to make it over to the door, but about halfway there, my eyesight became blurry and I started feeling dizzy, so I turned around and went back to sit on the end of my bed and wait for wait to find out from this big one what was going on and where I was. The minutes that passed as I waited for this so-called big one seemed like hours, but finally I could hear what sounded like voices coming down the hall. But they were in that strange language again. This made me feel uneasy because they were probably discussing what they were going to do with me and the other two guys that were in the room. As the door opened, I said a little prayer that my luck had changed and these creatures were going to help me and the human race survive. The door made a soft thud as it hit the wall that was behind it, and for a moment I was startled by what was standing in the doorway. Then I realized that this was Bigfoot, the creature that rescued me when I was a little boy, and if he had meant me any harm, he wouldn't have rescued me way back then or yesterday on the mountainside. He walked over to my bed and said, "Don't be afraid, little one. It may look strange and unbelievable to you, but let me assure you that we're real and we don't mean you any harm." I looked up at the creature and said, "I kind of figured that out back at the creek when I looked down and saw your hairy feet." Looking puzzled, the big one asked, "How did you know I wasn't one of the aliens that was destroying this world and your people?" I thought for a moment and said, "Well, it seems our paths are meant to cross, big one, because years ago you were there to save my life when I needed you the most. You were there for me just like yesterday, and I want to thank you for saving my life." "Well, kid, don't thank me yet. I probably just pulled you out of the frying pan to end up in the fire like all of us." "So what do you mean by that, Mr. Bigfoot?" "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Easy on the mister, kid. Around here, my friends call me Big One or Benny, whichever you prefer will do. And may I ask what your name is, little one?" "Sure, it's Timmy Dawson, and I'm from Texas. It's nice to finally officially meet you, Benny." The forest fairy cut into the conversation then and said, "Well, since everyone is introducing themselves, my name is Aurora, and it's nice to meet you, Mr. Timmy." I shook her hand and said, "No, it's nice and so amazing that I am here and meeting both of you in person. No one is going to believe that I talked to a real Bigfoot." The big one just slumped his head and said, "If we can't stop these aliens this time, there won't be anyone or any creature left on Earth to tell." Alright, be on the lookout for Volume 6 of The Myths Alive to find out what happens to Timmy and the Big One.